interesting because no one seems to be willing to talk about what it is that's before us. A budget that is dealing with the next 5 years. It's a $17.8 trillion budget over the next 5 years. That's what we need to focus on. That's what this debate is all about. And with that, I'm very happy to yield 3 minutes to our hardworking and very thoughtful chairman of the Republican Conference, the gentleman from Columbus, Indiana, Mr. Pence.
The gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 3 minutes.
Ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks, Madam Speaker. Thank you. I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, I come to the floor today in the midst of a debate and rise in opposition to the conference report on the Democratic budget. I do so following after the quite typically forceful remarks of the gentlelady from Connecticut, whom I respect as a colleague. She, as the gentleman from California just said, focused a great deal on the last 8 years. And allow me to say, as someone who in this body through the course of the last 8 years was, as my colleagues know, a harsh and public and consistent critic of runaway federal spending under Republican control, allow me to stipulate the gentlelady makes a point. The truth is, in the 8 years of the Bush administration's tenure under Republican control, 6 of those years we did manage to double the national debt. And that was a disappointment to millions of Americans, me included. And I believe it was part and parcel why the American people in 2006 showed us the door. Because they know we can't borrow and spend our way to a healthy America. So I'll stipulate to that point, Madam Speaker, but it doesn't follow or stand to reason that coming to the floor as the gentlelady from Connecticut did, and as others have today, and complaining about overspending under Republican control of Congress, that the answer would be this budget, which would, on top of what has already happened, this budget would double the national debt in 5 years and triple the national debt in 10. It just simply doesn't make sense, I would expect, Madam Speaker, to anyone that's looking in, that in the midst of these difficult times, a time when the American people are hurting, when every family and small business and family farmer across this country are sitting down around kitchen tables and metal desks in offices and figuring out how to make ends meet. They're making sacrifices. They're putting off to tomorrow what they don't have to spend today. Here they see Democrat majorities in the House and the Senate bringing to the floor the most fiscally irresponsible budget in American history. And I say again, according to the numbers, and we can get lost in the numbers, outlays of $3.5 trillion for fiscal year 2010, $1.2 trillion in deficits in 2010. The deficits over this period never fall below $500 billion, a number that was roundly criticized when the Bush administration and Republicans hit that number, is now accepted to be the norm. And as I mentioned, public debt by the year 2014 will rise to more than 2/3 as a share of the economy. It is astonishing to point out the European Union requires countries to keep their debt below 60% of their economy. If this Democrat majority and this administration have their way,
I'm happy to yield my friend an additional 2 minutes.
The gentleman is recognized for another 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman, Madam Speaker. This administration and this Democrat majority have their way, the United States of America by 2014 wouldn't even qualify under the criteria of the European Union. Not that I would ever want to join. It just gives a perspective here, Madam Speaker, that what we have before us today is a budget that's out of step with the American people. It's a budget that does not embrace the sacrifice and the resilience and the demonstrated virtue that millions of American families and millions of small businesses are practicing today. The truth is we can do better. The truth is the American people know that this Congress has the capacity, even during these difficult times, to do the right thing, to take our jackets off, to roll our sleeves up, to do the hard work. I look across the aisle and I see the gentleman with whom I serve that I personally and deeply respect. And I have to believe there are many colleagues on the other side of the aisle that also know this we ought not to do. After a so-called stimulus bill that spent $1 trillion, an omnibus bill that increased spending by 8% for last year's business, and now the most fiscally irresponsible budget in American history, enough is enough. The American people want this Congress to begin to practice fiscal discipline and reform. And we ought to do so by rejecting this conference report. And I urge my colleagues to do so. And yield back.